This is Mr. Martin. These are video notes for section 12.3. We're going to start our last two topics of the school year. So the first part, we're going to be looking at a new way to find area of a triangle. And then we're going to be looking at law of sines. So let's take a look at an example. We're going to be using some stuff that we've learned previously in the chapter to help us find the area of this triangle. So if we look, we've got the height here labeled h, which we're going to need if we're going to use our standard formula for finding area, which is 1/2 base times height for a triangle. And we know the base is 33, we just need to find the height. But if you look here, we've got this right triangle. And if I have a right triangle and I know one side and I know one angle, then I can find any other part using SOHCAHTOA. So here's the angle that I'm going to be standing at, which would make the 29 the hypotenuse, and it would make the h the opposite side. Okay, the bottom part here, the bottom piece of the 33 would be the adjacent, but we're not really concerned about that. So if I want to find the height, it uses opposite and hypotenuse, so that's our sine ratio. So a little work here over on the side. I know that the sine of 55 degrees is going to be the opposite side, which we're trying to find, so that's h, over the hypotenuse, which is 29. So I'm going to put that over 1. I'm going to cross multiply. I get h is equal to 29 sine 55, which is going to be about 23.76 centimeters. Okay, so now that I know the height, all I have to do is substitute it back in. 1/2 times the base, which is 33, times the height, which is 23.76, and calculate that to be about 392 centimeters squared. So before we move on, I want to point something out here. Notice that this number here is 29 sine 55. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Alright, let's do one more together, and then I'm going to let you do the third one on your own. This one is turned a little bit differently, but still we kind of have the same thing. If I look at this right triangle over here, then the 21 again is going to be my hypotenuse, and the 72 is opposite my h, so that's my opposite side. So if I want to find the height, again I could use my sine ratio. So now for this one, I've got sine of 72 degrees is equal to h over 21. So put that over 1 and cross multiply again, and I get h is equal to 21 sine 72 degrees. Alright, and we calculate that out. That's going to be about 19.97 centimeters. Alright, then we can go back and we can substitute it into 1/2 base times height. So I've got 1/2, my base is 38.5. 38.5, and my height is 19.97, which is going to give us about 384.5 centimeters squared. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, and then when you start it back up, you'll see the solution for this one, so you can kind of check. Now keep in mind, there may be, just give you a little hint there, there's some extraneous information in this problem that you don't really need, and I will leave it up to you guys to figure it out. So go ahead and pause, work this out, and then restart when you're ready to check. Alright, so here's the solution for part C. Hopefully for the height you got around 26.56 centimeters. And then when you go ahead and plug it back in, you get 571.0 centimeters squared. And then notice how this was some extraneous information. We couldn't really use the 50 because if I use this top right triangle, I would need to know what that right side was, and we don't know that, so we need to use the highlighted triangle on the bottom to get the height. Alright, so maybe you noticed in each of these problems, what I know is I know two sides of my original triangle. So on this triangle I knew the 43 and I knew the 33.7, and I knew the included angle. Remember, the included angle is the angle in between the two sides, or the angle that the two sides meet at. If we come back up here, again, I know two sides of the whole big triangle that we're trying to find the area of, and the included angle. Let's check part A. Two sides and the included angle, the angle in between the two sides. So we found the height the same way every time. The height was 29, one of the sides we knew, times the sine of 55. Over here, the height was 21, our hypotenuse of that triangle, times the sine of 72. And over here it was 33.7, one of our sides, times the sine of 52. And then we plugged in that number, the side times the sine of 52, times the other side, and then took a half because it was a triangle. So if we want to come up with some sort of a formula for this, using this kind of triangle, we'll use this generic triangle here. In words, then the area equals half the product of two sides of the triangle times the sine of the included, this is really important, the included angle. Alright, so in symbols it would be 1/2, area equals 1/2, and then the two sides that we have here are A and B. A times B, and the angle that's in between them is C, so AB times the sine of angle C. Alright, so basically you just need any two sides of the triangle and the angle in between the two sides. You do half the product of the two sides times the sine of the angle. Alright, as always, if you have any questions, make sure that you ask. And when you're ready, move on to the next video where we're going to talk about law of sines.